Oh, just tell us a little bit about your background. If you could summarize, maybe I missed a point or two.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Chef Chris, and also to Chef Thomas. Thank you for joining us. It's such an honor to be on this webinar with all of you, and also all the other chefs joining us from across the world. Such a great opportunity to share what we're doing here in South Africa. And Chef Chris, as you said, this project is very close to me, purely because I always see myself, as a farm boy, if you want to say that. Growing up, surrounded by an abundance of fresh produce, farm animals, and that it's such a different environment. And touching back to what Chef Thomas said earlier, that it takes us back. COVID is taking us back to where we're starting to have dinner table talks, and that takes me back to my childhood. Growing up, being chased by chickens, for example, because you went to take some of their eggs. Being pecked on the nose by one of them. Following my dad and my granddad into the farm, picking up produce, jumping onto the lorries and tractors, and just that whole, that experience of being on the farm, and then coming back home, and being part of such a large family where, your grands and aunts and my mum, get together, cook the produce that has been sourced for the day, and then that itself becomes an activity, and then sitting down and sharing conversation, sharing good food. You can't get better than that. And that's something that has, been with me my entire life. And this is why I'm so passionate about what I'm doing today. And, when I did, just for the, information of the other chefs that are on this call, when I did finish school, I actually studied towards a finance degree. But my heart wasn't in it, because my heart was still in food and culinary and, produce. And this is where I followed my passion. And this is how I got to becoming a chef. And, looking back now, you went through my achievements and, what I've done and what I'm currently doing. But for me, it's not about that. For me, it's always being humble and always, standing, righteous to your roots and what you believe in. And I think that's what we need to also, take with us, no matter what spectrum that we find ourselves in.
Your passion is absolutely contagious, which is incredible. Tell us a little bit. So we're here to talk about Chefs with Compassion. Tell us a little bit about how it started and what it is a little bit.
Okay, so like every country in the world currently, we're all faced with this pandemic called COVID-19. And towards the end of March this year, South Africa went on to a full lockdown. So every industry was shut down, schools were shut down, borders were shut down. And unfortunately, it resulted in some of the industries being affected. The hospitality, tourism, restaurant industry in South Africa was severely affected. We found a lot of businesses already starting to close in the very early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic or the lockdown. We also found a lot of our colleagues, our chefs and food service colleagues like waiters, restaurant owners, all being affected, and either by losing their jobs, loss of income, and people couldn't afford the basics. They couldn't afford a plate of food. And this is where Chefs of Compassion, and it started, and it was a collaboration that was spearheaded by the South African Chefs Association, Slow Food International, Slow Foods Local Forum, which is the Chefs Alliance in South Africa, Strategic PR, and then our food rescue partner, who is Nosh Food Rescue. So it's a collaboration by these five very well-esteemed organizations in South Africa that came together for a common cause. We put aside our differences, we put aside everything else for a cause that we felt so strongly in, and that was to feed people in these very trying times. And chefs were very eager to come on board because I think it's the first time in world history that chefs were actually at home doing absolutely nothing.
Unfortunately so, yes.
Yes. So the support that we had from the chefs to join us on this new initiative and project was, extremely overwhelming. Everybody wanted to get involved, and we then looked at the other aspect that we are faced with. So South Africa, and as with most African countries, has a very high poverty rate, has a very high hunger rate, but at the same time, we also have a very high food wastage rate. And we said, how do we not tackle these three very important struggles that we face with? So with Nosh Food Rescue, we went out there to start rescuing produce that would have gone to waste. And then we take that produce and then turn it into nutritional meals, because we have chefs now cooking these meals. A lot of creativity goes in it. A lot of love and passion goes into it. And we take these meals that are cooked by chefs and then distribute it to the deserving communities that are in need. And that's how the name Chefs with Compassion, because, compassion, it's about the passion, it's about the love, it's about the willingness of chefs to give back. And that's how Chefs with Compassion started. And we officially came about on the first week of April, serving at about 1,200 meals for that week. And now we see ourselves doing about 60 to 65,000 meals a week.
All right, so this is, I just hope everybody is catching this, because, the first time I heard about Chefs with Compassion, I was like, wow, this is, doing great things in South Africa. And, I kind of expected this to be a multi-year thing, and it's like, wait a minute, you just started in April. And one of the things that one of the takeaways I hope everybody takes away from this is, when you see a need, you jump in and get it going right away. And so anyways, just wanted to bring that up. So real quickly, I know you have a short presentation here, but
yes.
Tell us a little bit about food waste in general. I mean, what are we, because, we've spent a lot of time in Feed the Planet addressing food waste as a major problem and something that's linked, to food production, to energy, water, all of that. But you've linked food waste with human compassion. And so let's start with food waste and then go into a little bit about how this works in detail.
Okay, so I'm just going to quickly share with you a very scary stat from South Africa. South Africa produces about 31 million tons of food every year. And 10 million tons of this food actually goes to waste. So that's about a third of what we produce in this country going to waste. And, it just didn't make sense to us that we throw away this much of food, knowing that such a high number of our population goes to bed without a meal. Such a high number of our population is below the minimum wage in our country. And so much, such a high rate of our population can't afford the basics, basic food. And here we are throwing away, such good value, such good produce. And at the same time, our producers, our manufacturers, our farmers are also losing out from this whole process. And then just to, again, share with the viewers out there, just how this affects the economy of our country. And you could see, on this graph here, that 2.7 million tons of the 10 million is actually from agricultural produce. And it goes back to your sustainability webinars that you had earlier this year, Chef. And it touches on all of those aspects that you spoke about. So I'm going to leave this on. Obviously, Lynn's going to share this with our viewers later on. But it's just a very scary stat that we're dealing with at the moment in our country. And this is what propelled Chefs of Compassion to do what we are doing at the moment. And this is exactly what the waste in South Africa looks like. If you look at what our household waste is, I mean, there's people throw away. You open up a tin of a product and you only use possibly a quarter or half, and then the rest is going away into the dustbin. Restaurants and kitchens also, not all of our restaurants and kitchens have a recycle program in their at their units. That's also something that we need to look at. That's also something that we need to address in our country. And the retail industry also has a very high wastage value, where products that are not utilized correctly, products that are not purchased, just end up going back onto the landfill. So this is how Chefs of Compassion was born. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a collaboration of 5 very high-profile organizations within our country, with SA Chefs being one of them. And as you know, SA Chefs is our Worldchefs partner. And this is how Chefs of Compassion actually runs and what we actually do. So we are driven by rescuing produce. So we have volunteers who are mainly chefs who actually go out to producers, go out to farms, go out to the markets, go out to manufacturers, looking for produce that we can remove or rescue before it goes to the landfill. A lot of our produce currently is out of the fresh produce markets located in all our major cities across the country. The waste is then brought onto our warehouse, which we actually term a share house, because it's a place where we actually share ingredients, and it's sorted. And it's sorted, you know, for what can be fit for consumption. And the rest of the produce is actually then sent out to either a compost farm, or it's also sent out to any farmer that needs it for animal feed. So like a pig farmer in this instance. We then package all of the rescued produce. We've got kitchens across the country that have opened up during these very trying times and are willing to cook food. And then they come through and collect the ingredients and then go out and prepare these meals. We then match beneficiaries to these kitchens. And then they would then feed into these disadvantaged communities, homes, shelters, and beneficiaries that then you know, consume these meals that have been cooked. The one thing I must say is that it also, you know, has strengthened the creation of or creative juices of chefs, because we don't know what we're rescuing at times. You know, it all depends. Yeah, you know, a couple of weeks ago, as I mentioned to you, Chef Chris, we rescued, you know, 3 tons of spun speck, and chefs just looked, you know, very confused. What do we do with it? And then we ended up doing a whole range of dishes. I mean, there was spun speck soup that was made. There was a spun speck stir fry with noodles that was made. There was a spun speck casserole that was made. And what was so interesting is that the beneficiaries that ate these meals, they really enjoyed it. No, not one part of that meal went to waste. And they also felt so honored that here you have top chefs from across the country, from restaurants, from hotels, from catering companies, you know, all coming together to cook their meals that they would never have had the opportunity of going out to these restaurants to, you know, to be wined and dined by. So that's also something that we're touching on. Yeah.
I absolutely love this, because, you know, one of the things when we talk about food waste, as you said, it's about flexibility. You know, you have to be flexible to deal with what comes your way versus having something that's very rigid. But as chefs, you know, that's what we should be good at.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And here I just wanted to show you, you know, the type of produce, and look at the amounts of produce that we get. And this is just on any given day. We can rescue right up to 10 tons of produce in a day. And if you look at it, I mean, if you look at the picture in the middle, I mean, it's butternut. And if you look closely, there's nothing wrong with it. It's still edible. Once it's been cleaned and peeled and cubed, you know, you can still use it. But that was actually on its way to a landfill. And this is something that we are spearheading, something that we want to decrease in the country. You know, we want to see that 10 million tons of waste decrease to an absolute minimum, and at the same time decrease our hunger stats, and make sure that, you know, people in our country are being fed and they are given at least 3 meals a day. Another shocking stat that we picked up is that a lot of our disadvantaged communities in South Africa only have 2 meals a week. You know, And if you look at an average person that consumes 3 meals, that's 21 meals a week. But people in South Africa are having 2 meals a week. And that is a very scary stat. And I'm sure there are other countries out there that have the same experiences. And this is where we need to now close this gap and to ensure that every human, is given access to food.
These are absolutely amazing photos. So let me ask you, I mean, in terms of your partnerships, because you put together, one of the things I like about what you did is that you didn't say, South African Chef Association, we're just going to go do this. I think one of the important things I'd like you to talk about this is how do you put the partners together? Because as chefs, we do certain things really well, but we don't do everything well. And I think when you try to tackle a problem as complicated as hunger, you need to bring in other people. How did you do that? What was the response to that?
No, absolutely. And I think this is something that COVID has also shown us, is that we're in this together. I mean, no one, is on their own. I mean, the entire world is going through the same problems that that everyone's experiencing currently. So this is something that we've said, that we are in this together, but how do we help one another? And with the South African Chefs Association having the large database of chefs, that's the first place that we stopped at, because this is where we went to the chefs in that network to say, how can you guys help us achieve this? And then working with the South African Chefs Association partners and suppliers and that are already on that network, we also went further, to start identifying where can we get the assistance from a product base. And this is where we then, went to our friends at Slow Food International, because Slow Food International also, has a very deep root in produce and from where the produce comes from. And with their networks of community gardens and producers and farmers, that's where we were able to also network to, extract some of this produce. And through Slow Food International, who works very closely with Nosh Food Rescue, is where we then, found ourselves in a very different way of looking at produce. Because, for me personally, food rescue was never something that was on top of my list, but over the last 12 weeks, it's something where I've now had to change my mindset, and I've actually learned so much from it. And when I looked at what we started producing, from produce that I wouldn't have had, looked twice at previously, it's been a huge game changer for me. And then to bring it all together, we had to get our name out there, and this is where we, have a very wonderful partner called Strategic Public Relations, and through that was able to put our name out there in terms of a public relations and marketing to get the support from the general public.
And sort of to add to that, the other thing that I loved when I was looking through your material is, you also engage the people on the back end. In other words, how do you distribute the food and to whom does it go? And, as chefs, that's not always something that we're experts in. So I just love how you put the whole team together, with you being a very integral part of it, as a chef, but then you have experts on both sides to make the whole thing work. So let me ask you, we don't have a lot of time, but we have to talk about Mandela Day, because I didn't know this existed, and maybe I was just, ignorant to that. But tell us a little bit about Mandela Day, because this is incredible.
Okay, so the 18th of July is the birthday of Nelson Mandela. And everybody knows the great statesman that he was. And in 2009, the United Nations actually declared that Mandela's birthday becomes an International Day of Giving. And the number 67 is the number of years that Mandela spent fighting the struggle, back in the days of apartheid. So the world is encouraged to give back on Mandela Day 67 minutes. So everybody gives, depending on whatever you can do, whether it's painting a classroom at your local school, or running a soup kitchen, or assisting in a community garden, for example. So we as Chefs of Compassion, we looked at it and said, how do we take 67 and make it extra special? So this is where we came up with the 67,000 liter cook-off for Mandela Day. And this was done together in partnership with SA Harvest. SA Harvest is another food rescue company who, very similar philosophy as Chefs of Compassion, where our goal is to feed the nation. And this is how we came together with the 67,000 liter for Mandela Day. And 67,000 liters was able then to feed 268,000 people in impoverished areas in 10 cities across South Africa. And this took place last Saturday. And I'm very pleased to share that we had such an overwhelming response throughout the country, from chefs, from volunteers, and producers alike, that we were able to achieve 77,455 liters of soup on Mandela Day. And we were able to feed just under 310,000 people in one day across 10 cities in our country.
That's amazing. That's why I wanted you to talk about it. It makes me smile every time I see this. So just really quickly, and then we maybe have time for a few questions if anybody wants to send in a question. But let me just ask you kind of a personal level. I mean, you have a job, and how do you find the time to do it? Because as chefs, maybe we're a little less busy in these times, but chefs we're kind of busy. How do you make the time to do it?
So with COVID-19 and the lockdown, we are able to give a lot of our time towards this project. But we've already started opening our hospitality for business travel. So I'm already working between 2 to 3 times a week at my hotel that I work at. And we're already looking beyond the lockdown, beyond COVID, because this initiative has to continue. I just want to go back to this slide quickly to show you what Chefs of Compassion achieved in just 12 weeks since the first week of April. And you can see we've rescued just over 240 tons of produce, in this short space of time, feeding just over 400,000 people across our country. And there you can also see, 17% of that produce has gone to a pig farmer. So there is absolutely zero wastage from what we've now rescued in the last couple of weeks. And this is why we have now said this is not going to stop when the lockdown ends. It's going to be going long beyond this, because we have to decrease this food wastage problem that we have in our country. We've already got the commitment from a lot of chefs going forward, as we go back into industry, as we go back to our normal working hours, that every kitchen and every hotel will dedicate a certain amount of time, be it on a daily basis, be it on a weekly basis, or maybe twice a week, that every kitchen starts taking their own food wastage that they have in their kitchens and turning it into meals, and then feeding communities around their location. So whether it's a hotel or a restaurant or a catering company. So if each one of these kitchens start doing their bit for their communities, then this project is never going to stop.
That's amazing. Actually, you just answered my other question, which was about the future of this, because this is born out of the COVID realities, and despite the negativity of COVID and the problems, you've created something incredible in a very short period of time, and the fact that you are looking to the future, and I would also say, because I've looked through all your stuff, you are tracking everything and you're treating it like a business. That is huge. I have a question here that I just received, and I want to just ask you quickly on this one. And the question is, how can chefs invite others from the community and or government agencies to help reach other cities and communities to help alleviate food waste and fight against hunger? How can you do that? Get outside of, the organization that you're in and bring in more people from the community, get governmental support, etc. How do you do that?
So we already are engaging with a lot of people from our respective communities across the country. Unfortunately, at this point in time, like many governments at the moment who are very occupied at the moment with the COVID-19 pandemic, but we've already started engaging with our local governments. It is on our future plans as well to continue that relationship. And we want more support, because I think if we do have the support of the government, and that's for any country out there, once you have your government's support, the project becomes so much easier to maintain and so much easier to achieve the goals that we set out to achieve.
So is that also linked to why you brought in, excuse me, somebody to help you with marketing and PR, so that, if people don't know about you, if the government doesn't know about you, they can't get involved? Is that sort of your thought process?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why, this is not just a chef's project. We need volunteers and we need partners from all industries, because together, this is the only way we can actually work together. Because, we, for a project of this magnitude, especially from a logistics perspective, collecting the food, transporting the ingredients, transporting the meals to the communities and beneficiaries, you need a logistics partner, you need corporates to come in, you need donations to come in, because at the end of the day, it is a costly exercise, because there is, fuel that isn't taken into account. Communication, it also plays a role in that, in terms of, telecoms and, data, for example, because when you do initiatives like this, and also the feedback that you mentioned, we keep a database and we track everything. So even the kitchens that are cooking, we have a feedback app. So they actually feed it back to us, and they will say to us, this is the amount of produce that we got given. This is what we produce. This is the quantities that were produced. These are the quantities that we've gone into recycle waste. Here's a couple of pictures of what the food looks like, and these are the communities that we fed. So all of that comes through, and it's actually recorded. So every step of this process is recorded, so that we can also use these steps going forward, should we need to do a very similar initiative.
Amazing. So we are, I think, going to wrap this up, because we do try to keep these to half an hour. But I just want to call out a couple things, that I'm taking away from this. One is partnership. Putting it together and not trying to do everything alone, and bringing the experts to bear. I think that this amazing combination of dealing with this problem of food waste, and you showed that slide of, where the food waste is happening in South Africa. Every country could show a slide like that, because food waste is an enormous problem, and something that we at Feed the Planet, have looked at for a couple of years. We even have some products out there, one which is called the Food Waste Challenge, where we give you the tools within a food service establishment to be able to address the food waste that's happening in your business, and from a business perspective. But I think the thing that really I take away from this is something we talk about a lot in Worldchefs, which is the power of the white jacket. Yes. And I think we never can, underestimate the power of the white jacket, and the power of somebody who says, I just want to do something good. I want to change the world. And Chef, you're an inspiration to that. It's about action. It's about thinking big. And we all have the power to do that. We have the power to change the world, and not just to talk about it, but to hopefully take the example of what you have done, and then ask ourselves, I'm looking at the list, from Bahrain, from Turkey, from Egypt, from Kuwait, India, all over the world, to think about, how can I maybe do something like this where I live? How do I tackle food waste? How do I deal with hunger? Or other ways that you can get involved. And lastly, Chef, you said something that caught me, which was changing the mindset. You said, I've changed my mindset about food waste. And I think that's the challenge to all of us, is to not only change our mindset about food waste, but about sustainability in general, and about how we can get involved and do things. So with that, I just want to say a huge thank you, first of all, Chef, for everything you're doing in South Africa. It is again, I just smile when I think about it. And a huge thank you for taking the time. To President Googler, who's joined us today, thank you. To the amazing Lynn, who is in Paris and makes all of this happen. None of this happens without Lynn. She's the one, she's like, we talk about Charlie's Angels, you know, we never see her, but she's actually behind the screen making everything happen. She's Charlie. And of course, to all of you for taking the time to join us, taking the time out of your day. Time is a precious gift, and I thank you for joining us, and hopefully this has been helpful. So with that, we'll see you in 3 weeks. We have another really cool webinar coming up. And Chef, once again, thank you, and please send greetings to everybody in South Africa from Worldchefs and Feed the Planet. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much, Chef.
Bye-bye.